Well, let's go in tonight at these pictures. First of all, do you see him as the voice in the burning bush? In other words, do you realize he is the great I am? And that should bring to your mind the 7 great statements. Remember, the Gospel by John was written by the same fellow that wrote the Revelation of Jesus Christ. The book of Revelation is known for its 7s, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls, and the 7 thises and that's, all the way through. In fact, there are dozens of them, even more than we realize in the book of Revelation. But did you know the same author that wrote Revelation, who wrote John, and built his whole book around 7 signs, 7 names, and 7 discourses? There are a trinity of 7s in the book, the Gospel by John. And so those 7 I am should come to our mind right away. Next, do you see him as the Passover Lamb of God? Now, if the burning bush reminded us that he is the great I am, then the Passover Lamb of God should remind us of his declaration, because there's a correspondence here to his 7 I am statements. And what was Christ's declaration? He said, I am the good shepherd, and the good shepherd what? Giveth what? His life. What's the Passover? The giving of his life to keep the wrath of God from coming on us. And so there's a parallelism between the Old Testament picture, Christ our Passover, and the New Testament declaration, the Good Shepherd is the one who gives his life for his sheep. So Jesus was not only the Lamb, but he was the Lamb who was the Good Shepherd of the sheep, who sacrificed himself in our place. And so there's a wonderful correspondence. So do you see him as the Passover Lamb of God, the Good Shepherd? Pictures of Christ our Passover. Every time you see that Passover door with the blood on the lintel and on the doorpost, you should see that as a beautiful picture of a cross. And you should think of chapter 12, the Passover, always in light of chapter 6 in Exodus, where God says, I will redeem you with outstretched arms. Because that's the picture of the Passover, of the redemption, the outstretched arms of Christ on the cross. Next, we see Christ in this question. Do you see him as the unleavened bread of communion? Do you remember that Jesus said in John 6, I am the bread of life. I am the bread of God come down from heaven. And he came down non peccari, as it says in Latin, without sin. He was impeccable. He never sinned because he was perfectly God in human flesh. And so he was the perfect unleavened bread because he was sinless. And that's why we should see Christ as our unleavened bread. Specifically, he's described as the bread of life. He was the one who fed the Israelites in the wilderness with manna from heaven. That's what he wants to do for us. And as I've said over and over again, and I hope that whenever you celebrate communion, you think of the fact that the Jewish matzoh bread of Passover is such a picture with the pierced holes through it, with the stripes on it of Jesus Christ, who with his stripes we are healed, and he was the one who was pierced for us.